see you in person. I ask the simple question: will sanctions work at this point on Vladimir Putin?
No, especially if they're Biden sanctions. For 2 years, I've been calling on this administration to maximize the banking sanctions. He continues to exclude energy. So 50% of the bank funding is from the energy sector. Next, there's still 300 ghost ships that Iran is using to run Russian oil to export to other countries as well illegally. And finally, Joe Biden is artificially keeping the price of oil up through his policies in America, which is thereby funding Russia.
So why would he do that? How does that help him in an election year? Because I have to think everything's coming through that calculus.
Well, I think that this is just the next chapter of Joe Biden's national security policies, his foreign policies. And it seems like he can't get anything correct. And this is one more chapter, again, excluding and not doing anything with the energy sector on banking sanctions, I think is just grossly wrong.
So when you say the energy sanctions and the energy sector, how would that really break the back of someone like a Russian dictator, Vladimir Putin?
Well, it's been said many times that Russia is basically a fueling station, that a large, maybe 80% of their economy is driven by oil and gas. So if we would put sanctions on that in the energy sector and anybody that's doing business with Russia, then it starts having some economic impact on them.
You know what this sounds like? This sounds like what we didn't do to Iran when they were playing, footsie on, can we get the deal back from this administration? Meanwhile, they're selling their oil, as you just mentioned, through those ghost ships on the open market at very high prices. And no sanctions stopped Iran. Why would we think they would work on Russia?
Right. So nobody respects Joe Biden. He's brought us war through weakness, and this is the next chapter. We can't look at foreign policy in little silos. Look, Iran is connected to Russia, is connected to China, somewhat connected to North Korea. Those are our enemies, let's face it. So we should be putting sanctions on anybody doing business with Russia.
All right, before I move on, Senator Marshall, you just said Biden's brought us war through weakness. Do you think it's going to get worse in the Middle East with where we are now? I mean, our men and women are getting hit north of 200 times.
Right. I think it will until he stands up and hits the bully in the nose. I think that's the only thing that Iran will respond to is, I think, what President Reagan did in the 1980s when Iran attacked one of our warships. He went back and he bombed their oil platforms and also sunk 3 of their ships without going inside the territory proper.
Okay. So in other words, what we're doing is not enough.
It's totally inadequate. Appeasement's not working. Peace through strength. Let's go back to Reagan, Eisenhower policies.
I'm so glad you're here. Okay, so we reported yesterday President Biden is weighing executive action now to deal with his own border crisis. And this comes less than a month after he said he had no power to do that. I can't do it without Congress. Well, now word of some sort of action that's going to happen conveniently for him politically right before the State of the Union. And it's drawing immediate fire from both the left and the right. Speaker Mike Johnson says the president could have done this from day one. And the Hill is putting it plainly. It's a tough political choice for President Biden. Meanwhile, our own Bill Maloogian found this hidden gem buried in the final pages of ICE's fiscal year 2023 report. It reveals only 288 Chinese nationals were deported from the United States since October, despite more than 24,000 of them crossing the border, Chinese nationals. What do you make of that?
Yeah, so it's exploding. Probably 40,000 Chinese nationals that have been led into the country, caught and released.
So the number is even bigger, you think?
Oh, I think in total it's probably over 40,000. That would be accurate over the last 3 years, mostly the last year and a half. Mm-hmm. So that's exactly what are they doing? We know that they bring the precursors from China of the fentanyl over here, and now they're managing the money on the backside of the fentanyl crisis as well. And you wait and see, human trafficking is going to be exploding as well. The Chinese are intimately involved in all this process, the fentanyl trafficking and the human trafficking.
Well, Senator, also, we found out that they were setting up police stations. And we know about the spy balloon, where it hovered for almost, more than a week before the White House wanted anybody to know. And there was a man on the ground in Montana who saw it. God bless his soul. So what are we up against when you hear 288 sent back, deported, versus 24,000 who've come? In the shorter period of time that I talked about in the wider period of time that you talked about, more than 40,000.
Right. And again, this is the tip of the iceberg. Think about the $500 billion of intellectual property China steals every year. 90% of the counterfeits that come into this country are made in China, and now they have their own Amazon platform advertised on the Super Bowl, which we protested to bring those products in as well. So they're taking over our country in so many ways, but yet we continue to invest in China.
Real quickly, I want to remind everybody what they're seeing on the left of their screen. We have a lot of breaking news. Senator, again, so glad to have you here in person. So governors meeting at the White House today, Democrats and Republicans, and the president, I would imagine, has a long list of things to talk about, not the least of which is the Biden border crisis. So I just wanted to remind everybody that's coming through. In fact, let's show somebody this, or show everybody this. Blue state governors at the White House right now as their states grapple with the influx of illegals, as the senator and I are talking about. In New York City, there were 2 violent attacks just hours apart in Times Square, both allegedly involving illegals in the state, like a mob of them. And in Chicago, 4 illegal immigrants suspected of robbing and strangling a man on a commuter train are in court today. Prosecutors charged them with assault and robbery. Chicago resident Kata Truss, who was in focus yesterday, had some strong words for Democrat leaders.
We're so angry here in Chicago, which has been a Democratic stronghold for most of its eternity. This year, we're working to turn Chicago red. We are so angry with Pritzker and with President Biden and with our mayor that we have decided that we're going to vote Republican this time around. That's just how angry we are.
So look, it's never too late to do something great. And I don't know if the president is thinking like that. My mom used to say that, okay? But I don't know. We haven't seen the something great. And if it's going to be timed with the State of the Union, I don't know that it will be great. It'll just be what he decides he can do.
Yeah, let's see if this president can execute a simple plan. He has the legal authority to say that the border is in crisis, to shut down the border. He'll have to work with the Mexican government to do this Remain in Mexico policy, but he has the authority to do it. President Trump proved that you can do that, so let's see how he works it out.
Senator Marshall, how could he not have that authority? He flipped the switch so quickly on former President Trump's policies that were quelling the tide that we see now is out of control without those policies. So if you can flip it one way, can't you flip it the other way? I don't know who he thinks he's talking to, but as Americans, we're not that stupid.
You got it. He over 90 executive orders he wrote when he took office to flip the switch on. He can flip it off just as easily.
Wow. All right, real quickly, you saw Kata Truss there from Chicago. She talked about particularly Black Americans there going and looking for some other options beside Democrat. A quick thought on that and we'll go.
Safety and security is the #1 issue for Americans. Whether you're in rural Kansas or in Chicago, people are concerned. Crime is out of control. We become a lawless society. Open borders, cashless bail, defund the police. We need to go back to law and order. You know, John Adams wrote that the Constitution was wrote for a moral and religious society. Communities need to get back in charge.
There you go. She told me that if Republicans go to Chicago, she will meet them at the door.
There you go.
All right. Good to see you.
My
Thank you
pleasure.
so much.
Thank you.
And blessings to Kansas, by the way. I miss home.
Thank you.